All right, so take a quick run down the line. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was looking.
Okay. All right, Curtis. All right. Mojo.
Here.
Nick.
Here.
Corey. Yep. Now everybody moved because we got in different rooms. So. Ayo.
Yep.
Chandler. Ryan. Everybody. Joseph. Shanice. Jarrett. And she might have dropped. I hadn't really, I noticed that there was a couple, one person I think dropped, and that might have been her. Noah. Not here. Sarah. Robin. Out. Cody.
Yeah.
And Tyler. Yeah. All right. So what we're going to start out today with kind of taking a look at okay, we're going to start out with kind of talking about what exactly is organizational behavior. Okay, so so when I say organizational behavior, what do you think it is?
The organization you work with.
Okay, how you behave with the organization you work with? How about from over here? Planning, okay.
Like quarterly, then not just like go for a project, like planning long term.
Okay. What else?
It's just how you like communicate and just interact with people inside your organization.
Okay. Good. What do you think?
How you handle different problems
Okay.
within the organization.
So would they go with like ethics and morals within the business?
Okay. The secret is you guys are all right? Okay. So if you guys take a look at from here so when we talk about this, right? Everybody here's had an introduction to management, right? So when you take a look at a manager's duties, how do you think that relates to organizational behavior? So what's a manager do?
Make sure that the business is running smoothly.
Make sure the business is running smoothly. What else?
Overseas, production, lower employees.
Okay.
Recruiting good employees.
Recruiting good employees. What else? Someone from over here. What's a manager do?
Just like maximize like his potential, like the most out of his employees.
Okay. So all of these play into effect, right? But see, where does it? So when we look at introduction to management, what do we talk about in that class? Do we really talk about the organization? No, right? It was all focused on pretty much on how the individual as a manager acted within the organization, right? Okay. Organizational behavior, we kind of look at it from two perspectives. Okay. Kind of mentioned it from before, right? The first thing we talked about was about how you react with the organization. The second part is how the organization itself operates, right? It behaves. You talked about ethics. Okay. Ethics works both ways. It's internal and external. Okay. It's internally on how a manager would act within the organization. Okay. And externally, it's how the organization acts, right? Because they are different. Okay. So what we're going to look through the entire time here is really dive into those internal and external parts of the organization. okay, throughout the whole course. Okay, so take a look at our intro to management course. And we're going to dive down into probably about 30% of what that course is about. Because we're not really going to talk a lot about leadership. Okay, we're not really, we will kind of touch on ethics. We're going to talk about, you know, on CSR, corporate social responsibility, okay, how the organization acts, but also how the individuals act within the organization, okay? We're going to kind of do that. I have this slide. There's a couple of slides here in this particular one, okay? Because this kind of leads you right back to what we talked about in intro to management, okay? We kind of talk a little bit about that organization planning, okay? Controlling, leading, okay? We're looking at probably everything but leading in here, okay, as far as that goes. Leadership has its own course, okay, because that's a whole different realm, but it kind of pulls in some of the things that we'll be talking about as well. So there is some overlap there. But the one I like to look at here is this here, okay? Who in here has had psychology? You're taking the class now, okay? Show of hands, who's had psychology, okay? Who's had sociology? Okay, a couple of people, okay? So what'd you think of those classes? Minus the professor, just content-wise, huh?
Well, they're interesting.
Okay, yeah, content-wise, leave out the instructor part, okay?
Yeah.
Just, because I don't want, we won't open that door, but from what we're looking at, so they were interesting, right? Why did you find them interesting?
You really get to see how people react and why they act that way and why they behave that way,
Okay.
and then how you can change how people act from the setting, how you talk to them, how you behave around them.
Okay.
It's very interesting.
Okay, and so, and then you have sociology, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and sociology is what?
The way we communicate and go about things.
Yeah, it's interaction with society, basically, how the individual interacts with the society, okay? So how is that different? So psychology is what, the study of the inside of your mind, basically, right?
Very much like the why.
Right, okay, why do you think that way? What causes you to think that way? Sociology is kind of that intermix between the two, right?
Mhm.
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to split a couple people today, but we got 4 groups anyway, so we'll do 4 out of the 5. So what I'm going to do is kind of split you guys up into 4 groups right now, okay? And what I'm going to do is we're going to take 4 of those, and then I'll cover the 5th, okay? So what we're going to do is remember which one you guys will be. We're going to do psychology over here, okay? This group in the middle here, you guys will take sociology, okay? You guys get political science, and you guys and I'll have you swing over for this, hook up with them, and then the 3 of you guys in the back there, you guys will get anthropology, okay? All of these relate to the aspect of organizational behavior, okay, in some way. So what I want you to do is kind of define what it is, and we kind of, the sociology and psychology have a little bit of a break as we kind of talk a little bit about them, okay? But the second part of this is first you're going to define it, then you're going to see how it would apply to this. I want you to tell me how you would apply that to the business organization, okay? So think about how you would apply those social sciences to that, okay? So I'll give you guys 5-7 minutes to take a look at that, okay? So to answer those questions, okay, get together kind of in the group aspect of it, figure out what it is, and then tell me how it's applied to the business organization. And yes, you can use the mobile devices and the laptops and everything else. So.
Political science, I thought. You said how it shapes the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, how it applies to the business organizations.
My friend says, preparing you for a business might teach you the political economy and help you to understand power, authority, and organizations of all sorts. It's essential for understanding how politics and culture shape business.
Pretty much just.
It's like, understanding the form, political actions, and development. Basically, what you said.
Basically, what he's saying.
Basically. Yeah, basically, keeping human understanding.
The trickier part is to apply it to the business.
Okay, so what are the questions?
There's only two, okay? Define what it is, okay? And how you would apply it to the business organization.
Okay.
Okay? How does that social science apply to the business organization?
Oh, it also promotes citizenship.
Okay.
So it'd be used just kind of.
To learn from, like, to learn, like, leader past action. I guess applying it to a business, would be like explaining what like each division, each department does, like, okay, the divisional manager does this, the store manager does this, the assistant, the clerk, this and that. Just like, I guess, explain what each one does, so that you have like a good sense of what's going on, like, where you fall, who you would listen to. Like, that way it's not all like, John, you don't walk, you do this, and it's like, well, who are you? I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is more of looking at business and how it is like their cultures in society. And then I feel like you know, into the business world, by matching those people up, or that's funny, because yeah, you would matching other people up from different cultures and societies, and like saying you're working together so that they can all find like their own. Or people looking for variety, and they help like the business like grow, like feel diverse.
Okay, so we'll start with sociology. Okay, actually, we'll start out with psychology. Okay, because that's kind of where we kind of somewhat define that a little bit already. So, what do you say psychology is? What's psychology?
It's like the study of the human mind.
Okay.
It like tries to naturally explain like how people act or like their behavioral characteristics.
Okay. So how would you apply that to the business environment?
So I put like 3 different reasons. So
Okay.
training and be efficient with other team members.
Okay.
And then like also help with the recruiting process.
Okay.
Go through a bunch of interviews, see how different people, think, and you can plug them into your workspace.
Okay.
And also to build a bridge between business and the consumer.
Okay. So when you look at this, those are where some key aspects of psychology, right? So I know we have some joint marketing people in here, right? So you guys definitely use a lot of psychology, right? I mean, I guarantee marketers as a whole, you're going to use a ton of psychology in marketing these days. So that's actually a good draw-in from the organizational behavior from the outside, because it also applies to how the organization would be viewed outside. Okay, not just necessarily identifying with that, building that bridge with the community, with the consumer. It's also about position, right? Because in this day, in today's market, it's all about how the company is positioned, right? We see that almost every day. For instance, not that I borrow too much on the political climate that we have today, but you can see what's happening now with these, with many companies who are pulling out of, and I'll use the golfing reference there. Okay, the PGA of America decided that they were not going to host their golf tournament in 2022, I think it is. They moved it from Trump's National Course. And they have not actually said where they're going to put it yet. But why would they do that? Why do you think they would do that? Not getting political.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't know.
Leave it in the generality in the fact that, okay, and this is how I would put it. The PGA of America as a company, as an organization, decided that they didn't like the brand they were associated with. Okay? And we'll, like I said, leave the political out of it, but just from a company business perspective, that one organization decided that their consumers
Didn't want that brand.
didn't want to be affiliated with that brand. Okay? So that's part of that psychology, right? Is the psychology aspect of that is very much plays into it. Because what they said is that particular brand that they were going to be associated with is not what a consumer wants at this point. Okay? Like I said, leaving the political out of it, but I mean, that's, the reasons behind that are completely different, okay? But in general, from an organizational behavior perspective, that's what they chose to do. Okay, that definitely applies to that psychology aspect of it. Okay, sociology.
Sociology helps you understand the cultural and social aspects that shape each member of your team, function training from dealing with employees in the workplace, and in general things like social.
Okay, so how does that impact the business?
So I would say like basically it helps control like conflict.
Okay. What else?
Better understanding of consumers,
Okay,
like trends like that. So, and I don't even know.
It could help like a manager understand like people like different cultures in like a business.
okay, definitely. Diversity.
Yeah, international business and all that kind of stuff.
Diversity is key now, right?
Yeah.
Very key for most organizations, right? It's definitely something that's coming into play and will come in, and will be for the next probably 5 to 10 years. Okay, is how diverse is an organization? What is their makeup? What is their, and that applies to both inside and outside. Okay, it applies to the culture inside, which definitely applies to sociology, right? Because you have that internal component. Because any company is a society. Okay, it's a small subset of society, but it is a society. Okay, and how that individual works within that society becomes key, right? It's going to be something you really want to focus in on. Okay, and definitely in conflict resolution, because definitely, but you can actually even put conflict over here too. Okay. When you look at conflict, okay, both it has a society component to it, okay, as we see a lot more now than say when I came up, okay, and to give just to digress a little bit, organizational behavior is a relatively new science when it comes to business, okay. When I was sitting in this seat on the other side, okay, organizational behavior was not even a thought. Okay, so what organizational behavior has done is taken these social sciences and looking at how the organization is to be able to pull those in and get a better understanding of the bigger picture of an organization. Okay, because when I was in these seats, it was management, leadership, okay, and not a whole lot of leadership. Leadership is very much expanded over the years. So, and sure, I had to take psychology, sociology. I took social psych as well. Okay, now granted, they did me well as far as that goes within the management perspective, especially being in a very volatile environment that I was in. Okay, but I can tell you some of the things, and I'll share some of the stories as we go through here, how things have changed over the years. Okay, so let's go into, let's look at the aspect of poli-sci, political science.
We said, or I found that political science, it teaches you the fundamentals of political economy, And it pretty much helps you to understand power and authority in organizations of all sorts.
Definitely something that applies into organizational behavior, right?
Right.
The structure, every organization has a power structure, okay? And how that power structure works is extremely key. Yeah, I've often say, I pick and choose my battles, okay, as a manager, okay? Based on that political structure, okay? Does that mean that I don't buck the system? No, it just means that there are situations as a manager where I'll deem it necessary to use political capital to do it and to make my opinion known. Whether they agree with that or not in the end, who knows? Okay, I've won some, I've lost some. Okay, but understanding that climate is very much key to an organization and how you play as a manager in that role in that organization. All right, so what you guys come up with how it impacts?
We said like, understanding the different levels within a company.
All that in the power structure. Okay. Yeah, because basically that's kind of what it is. Authority and the way authority works, it's the power structure of an organization. Okay, what else? What would,
I love what that also goes with like when companies are trying to work together, like collaboration.
definitely.
But it's like you don't want to try and act too powerful when you're trying to work with another CEO because then they're gonna, they'll undermine it.
Exactly. Also, it's the same thing what I was talking about now, right? How political science plays into picking and choosing your battles, understanding the role of who's involved in that structure, the individuals, okay? And it also makes a difference on the political side of it, how you deal with that power structure, okay? There are times where I've chosen to go a very direct route. Okay, there are other times where I'll, depending on who I'm working with, I may choose to go through a not so direct route. Okay, I may use different tools to use the political science system. Okay, so understanding how the political system works, which is what poli-sci is understanding both political and power. That also helps you understand how you would do that. Okay, and how you would use that structure, and we'll definitely be looking into that as we go forward here, okay? Because that helps you choose your battles. It also helps you choose the tactic. Because unlike the rest of these, it doesn't necessarily show you tactics like political science will. Okay, that's where you're going to want to look at the how and why of the political structure works and the power structure works. Okay, so that political science, even though I don't know if anybody's taken political science in there. I don't think we have too many of this, but it's sometimes an interesting way to look at it and the way the power structure works. Okay, anthropology. This is one that definitely everybody's going like, well, why anthropology, right? So we're going to find that out.
Study of the societies and cultures and their development. It also says the study of human biological and psychological characteristics and their evolution. So this can be brought into like the business aspect and the organization, because using this, you can build your teams, teamwork around different cultural backgrounds. So you have more diverse teams, and it like kind of widens everybody's eyes to different aspects of the world and how people behave or how they learn.
Excellent. Because and this is where I usually start out with, businesses. We talk about a corporation. Okay, a corporation is its own entity. Okay, which means sometimes it acts like an individual. Okay, and then other times it acts as a society. Okay, within a society, there's always going to be culture. Okay, and I'm not talking about necessarily what we would normally think is culture, which is, different ethnic backgrounds, different sociological backgrounds, although that does play a little bit into it. But what we look at through anthropology is how does that organization's culture aspect of it on, you know, for instance, you take any of the I really look into leadership quite a bit in leadership styles. Take a look at the entrepreneurial style of leadership. Okay, when you look at an entrepreneur, what do you think of an entrepreneur? Any entrepreneur, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, right? What characteristics come to mind when you think about that?
Their mindset.
Okay, what do you mean by their mindsets?
Like their daily habits, what they do, why they became successful,
Okay.
what continues to make them successful.
Over here.
They go a little bit different to everything. They don't let just one person, you know, control that sector. They literally know how to do everything within the company.
What else do you think of an entrepreneur? The drive they have, right? Okay. And now you take a look at that. And you can look at Apple, you can look at Google, you can look at Microsoft. Okay, and we'll take those because they're pretty evident to everybody, right? Okay. When you take a look at Bill Gates when he started the company, okay, very much an entrepreneur. Would you say he's an entrepreneur today? How many people say yes? Is he still an entrepreneur? Okay. How many people say no? How many people don't really know? Okay, there we go.
Right now, I would say he's more of a philanthropist.
Yeah, he's more of a philanthropist now. He's not an entrepreneur from people who study, from the way I study those. Doesn't matter with Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs went through that same evolution. Okay. As you grow as a company, as a business grows from that entrepreneurial stage where they're doing everything. Okay. And if you look and study those individuals on Steve Jobs, when he started out, was not a nice person. Bill Gates was not a nice person. Okay. Those guys were very driven. Elon Musk, anybody who does any reading on Elon Musk knows he is not a good person to work for. Okay. Now, granted, now he has a huge team that works for him. Okay. So only a few people really deal with him. Okay. Richard Branson, the Virgin conglomerate. Okay. Another one who fits that same profile. Okay. And what I mean by that is that when they started out, and some of them still continue. Elon Musk probably is still in that entrepreneurial role. Okay. He didn't really evolve as quickly as, say, a Bill Gates or Steve Jobs did. Okay. They went through that process of that part of their career, which made great TV movies. Okay. For their earlier ones, made great TV movies or great movies in general. Because they were not great people to work for, because they're driven. Entrepreneurs can see that what they want, and they don't care who gets in their way. Okay, they really don't care who gets in their way. They have a vision, they go for it. Okay, and in the process, they do everything along the way. Okay, then they evolve when it gets to a point like Microsoft when it took off, or Apple after Steve Jobs came back to it a second time, it took off. Okay, that's when they can't operate that way and grow the company. So the company has to evolve. The understanding of that company and the way it works is anthropology. Okay, that's the study of the culture and how it progresses. Okay, so those are things that really, everybody say, yeah, anthropology, it doesn't apply. Well, actually it does, because you have to understand how an organization will move through its phases of its life. Okay, you've got Apple and Microsoft, which are in maturity now. Okay, and as a business and an organization, they have to change. Okay, otherwise they go the way of IBM and Kodak and a few others that I can name off that did not actually change quick enough. Okay.
You hear about Apple saying that deal about like making cars and stuff like that.
Oh,
Yeah, they're not. No, I did hear something about that. That they're going to make cars. Okay. Well, in essence, they have to do something else. Okay. Because unlike Tesla, and I'll use Elon Musk companies or the Virgin companies, okay, Richard Branson's companies, because those two guys they're all over the board, but in essence, they're smart because they know that there's going to be they understand organizational behavior very well because they understand that sooner or later something's going to run out. Okay, one of their businesses is going to reach maturity and it's not going to happen. I think Microsoft, my personal opinion, Microsoft and Apple have reached that point where they have to start to think beyond the what's next. And I think Apple especially is having that part of a problem of understanding what's next. Because honestly, how many improvements can you make to an iPhone? Okay, I mean, they've reached the point where the product is right there. Where do you go? Okay, they haven't been able to answer that question other than rolling out a few new features every time and calling it a new model. Okay, so you reach that. Now they started that technology. Okay, but now they've gone, okay, what's next? Because in order to, they have to have a product to sell, right? So not sure if cars is the right answer, but at least they're recognizing the fact that they have to do something else. I mean, the Apple Watch obviously isn't still, it's there, but it hasn't reached that level of the iPhone, okay? So they're gonna have to figure that out. And again, understanding how to grow is part of that anthropology. Social psychology, okay? So what is the difference between sociology and psychology and social psychology? What do you think? Yeah, it does merge those two. That's good. It's in the name, okay? But what in essence, what makes it different than studying psychology or sociology? Anybody take a stab at it?
So sociology is mainly like society, psychology is more about the person, why they have to do the things they do. So I'm assuming social psychology is like why people do the things they do within society or something like that.
Correct. That's it, and that's really what it is. It's the study of the individual interaction with society. Okay, why does an individual decide? They still haven't answered this question, but why does for instance, why does a member of society go out and decide he wants to become, a mass shooter? Okay, that's an individual who's choosing to react towards society. That's a social psychology problem. Okay, it's probably a psychology problem too, but on how that individual mind works. But social psychologists really spend a time, in that case, would be studying why that individual, what happened to that individual, and work the correlations would be to make that person maybe do that.
So maybe social psychology.
Yeah, in other words, it's not one individual, but it's many individuals with different backgrounds, and what they do is they pick it apart, okay, and go, why did this individual react with society that way, and why did this person do it, and can we make those things? What can we do to address those issues? So from a business perspective, it's the same thing. We look at how individuals fit into the society of the organization, okay, and understanding how that individual clicks. I used the term way before it was ever something to study, is that I called it the jigsaw puzzle effect, okay? And what I would do is I looked at how that individual would interact with my team, okay? So through the interview process, I'm looking for an assessment on how that individual is going to fit in, okay? Because I did two things. I hired to my weaknesses, okay? And also I hired to where that person would fit in to blend in with the individuals that I had on the team. Because I'll go back to earlier in my career with one of the first operations I had a senior manager tell me at one point, he goes, I have no idea how you make this work, okay, but you do. And what he was saying is because on the surface of my team of the operation was very diverse, extremely unusual for that time period, okay? I had almost every ethnicity. I had a couple of individuals who were mentally challenged, okay? I had one guy who didn't speak English, fluent Chinese, and I don't speak Chinese at all, okay? But as I put those people in place around the team, okay, that one guy, he could sit there and churn out work because he owned a bodega in New York for a long time and retired to near where I was. So he was basically a retiree. He didn't know anything else but to work. Okay, so, but also extremely skilled. Okay, I could show him once how to do something and he would produce that 200 times in probably a very quick fashion. And with a very large knife. Yeah, he was definitely, he was Mandarin, okay, and he had ran a store in New York City for probably 30 years. Okay, he did all his own food and all that stuff, so he could cook, right? Yeah, I mean, but I had to communicate with him, but on the surface, nobody else could talk to him. It would have to be me because I figured out a way that I could, it was all done by visual. It's all visual. I said, I need this. And I would tell him he could understand basically quantities. So I would say, I need 10 of these and make it this way. And he would do it very quickly. Okay. But I had, as a matter of fact, most of the time, throughout my career, I've always had women sous chefs. My second chef almost always has been a woman. Just because I found that most of those individuals balanced out my personality, okay, as well as played to my weaknesses from a management perspective, okay. So that particular crew, I had a female sous chef, which again, you're talking the late 80s in my field. We're still, the percentage of women is still probably about 30%, 35%, okay. I had a fully Chinese, I had an African-American cook, I had 2 students who worked for me. I had, and the senior management's just going, I have no idea how you make this work, okay? And basically what it is understanding how everybody fits into that organization, okay? Understanding that understanding yourself, okay? We talked a little bit in intro management, right, about understanding yourself and where you fit on Maslow and and where you fit on those needs hierarchies, okay? Understanding yourself makes you understand how you would react to the organization. And the last thing I'm going to do is I have where's my chart? Okay. Probably a little harder to read here, but this is done 10 years ago. This was a study that was done in 2006 or 2008, I think, of HR professionals. And they ranked basically managerial skills. Okay. Now, some of this I think applies now, and I think some of it probably is switched around a little bit. Okay. Number 1 is critical thinking and problem solving. I still think that's probably going to be pretty close to the top. Okay. Even by today's standards. Okay. As a manager, you have to deal with problems. Okay. And you have to know how to solve them. Okay. So if you don't have those critical thinking, problem solving skills, that's going to be tough for you. Yeah, I always have the saying, make a decision. I don't care if it's right or wrong, make a decision. Because if it's wrong, we'll talk about it. Okay. But if you don't make the decision, that's even worse. Okay. You're better off making a wrong decision or one that's not as good than make no decision at all. IT technology. I'd say that's probably moved down a little bit, mainly because we've become such a tech society over the last 15 years. I don't think that's it would be quite so high. I would say teamwork and collaboration probably is there, close to the top. The one I disagree with a little bit is they have diversity at number 5 and leadership at number 6. Okay, I think both of those are probably going to be higher today. Okay. I think technology is probably going to shift down because you guys are way more technology savvy than I am. Okay. Not that I'm necessarily bad. Diversity. Okay. Diversity is a skill, much like I just talked about in managing. You take a manager who's and you still see that's my age. Okay. That I'm an unusual person, okay, and I'll admit I'm unique, okay, in the fact that I was working with diversity way before it was a thing, okay. before it was a hot topic, okay? Mainly because I understood that that was a way to be able to meet the needs. But a typical manager from my style is probably not going to have that understanding of diversity, how to make different cultures, different individuals work together, okay? So when they're talking about diversity here, it's going to be about how you as a manager can bring the diversity together. And we all know that that's a huge issue now. I mean, right now, we're all looking at how does a manager bring in women?
So it's pretty much your knowledge on diversity and how you can use it to your advantage.
Well, not necessarily, you make it sound bad, but in essence, that's kind of what it is.
So like the business.
Yeah,
sense.
but in the business sense, yeah, what you want to do is you want to bring us to understand the diversity and how that might work, benefit the overall organization. Exactly, the same type of thing. You know, it's understanding how that diversity would fit into the team. In other words, you know, and there are still organizations out there that struggle with this, okay, on how to get people from different diverse backgrounds to work together, okay? And I spent the last couple of years before I moved here in Arizona, okay? And trying to get some of those organizations to get Latinos to understand how they work into an organization, okay, it sometimes can be difficult because, you know, depending on where they're at, okay, Native Americans also, another one, which is again, because they come from different backgrounds, they come from a different mindset, okay? So as a manager, you have to, because that's what's available. That's who you're going to be employing in that area, okay? Typically in Arizona, if you're not employing, it's going to be, for the most part, it's going to be Latinos, either Mexican or South American, okay, or American Indians, okay, from a reservation. And I almost guarantee probably none of you have seen a reservation, okay? Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, well, of course, La Crosse, you guys might see it a little bit more. But what's a reservation look like? Huh? On the lower side, right? It's a lower socioeconomic scale, okay? It looks like if you walked into the Bronx in New York City, but you took that out and put it in a rural area, okay? There are areas in Arizona where there's no running water on an Indian reservation, no running water, okay? So, I mean, that's a whole different mindset when you're working from the diversity of an employer, right? Okay, you've got to understand those needs as we talked about in internal management, right? That need scale, they're operating differently. They're thinking differently. So you're going to have to work out how you would manage to do that and bring them into the fold and understand how that would work with other individuals in your organization. So that's the key part there. You really got to understand how this all fits together as a big jigsaw puzzle. Okay, so this was just some things that were pretty important, I think, in business. I think, like I said, IT, I think has shifted down. Creativity is probably somewhere a little bit more down. I think diversity and leadership have moved up a little bit. I'd say probably the biggest one here is work ethic. Okay, that's the hardest one. The number one issue in most businesses today is understanding individuals in the younger groups, which you guys will be in. Work ethic is not something you teach. Okay, you have it or you don't. So it's harder to understand that. But a lot of you guys probably worked on and having been involved in athletic teams, understand work ethic probably better than maybe people in the general population, because you guys all practice and practice a lot. Okay, that builds work ethic. Okay, because you're going to have to do something, and that's the ability to want to be somewhere. Okay, to feel that you want to be part of it. Okay, and a lot of times now and studies have actually bore this out, is that people coming out of college and high school now don't have that same sense of work ethic, that understanding that you've got to work hard.
So if you had someone like that, someone there, how would you approach that? How would you get the person that doesn't have work ethic, like learn hard, I need to work a little harder?
You and I would probably be having a lot of conversations. Okay, and that's kind of what it becomes, coaching and training. Okay, it really does. It becomes a lot of coaching and training. And I say that kind of offhandedly, but it's in all seriousness, that's what it would be. Is as a manager and a leader, I would sit there and we'd be meeting a lot. We'd be setting a lot of goals. Okay. I'm a big proponent of goal setting. Okay. And creating paths on how to get there. And eventually what that does is over the long term, that changes behavior. Okay.
We could probably make it work together. But then
Yeah.
we can also, person that doesn't have work ethic, use that as an advantage to have the other person doing everything.
Yeah, and that's where the manager's role or the leader's role is to step in and go and balance that load out. Okay. And that's where typically that's what I would do. Is I would step in and we're going to talk about goals for you. We're going to talk about goals for you, and we're going to talk about how we're going to get this together. Okay. Because yeah, that's a tough problem. And it's a problem that occurs quite often today. You could. I try to screen it out, but sometimes you get somebody who has an individual who has the skills you want. Okay, so especially programming fields. Anybody know any computer scientists? Okay, they're not exactly the most. They're not always the easiest person to work with because they like to be alone. Okay, so I know my cousin's that one. He's a great programmer. I hate people. So he's a tough one. But we'll pick up on this on Friday, guys.
Yeah,